We continue now at the top of Daf 60b in Meseches, Bava Basra. This is Bava Basra Daf 60b. On the previous Summit, the Gemara said that there was a person who had a tree that was overhanging into the Rosh Hashanah, and Rabbi Yanai also, he had a tree that was overhanging into the Rosh Hashanah. The people of the Rosh Hashanah, they protested against this other individual who had the tree that was overhanging Rosh Hashanah, so he came before Rabbi Yanai, and Rabbi Yanai responded, Zil ho'idna, go now, v'tola mocher, you should come back tomorrow. And the point over here is that Rabbi Yanai wanted to remove his tree before he issued any ruling. Belelia, that night, Shadar Katzia Lahudi day, he sent and he cut down his tree. And Lamachar Asalakame, the next day, this individual came before him. Amarle, and Rabbi Yanai said to him, Zil coats, go and cut it down. Amarle, he said back to him, Hamar Namiasle, but the master also has a tree that overhangs Rosh Hashanah. Amarle, he said back to him, Zil Chazi, go and see. He coats didi, coats didach. If mine is cut, then you should cut yours. He lo coats didi. If mine is not cut, lo si kotzat, then you don't have to cut yours. And the Gemara says, May kara my savar levasof my savar. Originally, what did Rabbi Yanai think that he thought it was allowed? He had a tree that was overhanging Rosh Hashanah, and then at the end he changes his mind. Why did he change his mind? And the Gemara explains, Meikar originally, Savar, he thought, Nicha lehu levnei Rosh Hashanah de yasvi betulei. He thought that it's pleasing for the people of Rosh Hashanah to sit in the shade of the tree. So he didn't think he was doing any damage. Kevan dechaza de kamakvi. Now once he saw that they were protesting this other individual, so Shadar Katzia, so he sent to have his cut down. And the Gemara continues, well, why didn't he say to him, Zil kotes didach, you go cut yours, and then I'll go ahead and cut mine. Why did he want to cut his first? And the Gemara says the reason for that is Mishum de Reish Lakish. It's because of what Reish Lakish said. The Yomar, because Reish Lakish said that it says in the pasuk in Sefanya, Hiskoshashu vakoshu, it says that you have to gather, and you gather together, and we darshan that to mean kashot atzmacha, you should adorn yourself first, v'achar kat kashot acherim, and then adorn others. You should take care of the flaws in yourself before trying to correct others. So here also Rabbi Yanai first wanted to cut down his tree, and only then did he tell this individual to cut down his own tree. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, but if he wants to, what he can do is withdraw his house to within the property line, and that way he'll be able to have projections or balconies that come out of his house, and they won't be overhanging the Rosh Hashanah. And the Gemara says, they had the following question. Konas, let's say he withdrew his house from the property line, but then he didn't put up any kinds of projections or any kinds of balconies. What's the halacha in terms of now later in the future, if he decides, now I want to build a balcony, is he allowed to do that? Or do we say since he withdrew his house from the property line, so now he's essentially given that property up to the Rosh Hashanah, it's too late, he can't put a balcony up at this point in time. Rabbi Yochanan says, Kanas Motzi. Rabbi Yochanan says that if he withdrew, he is still allowed to put up these projections or these balconies, it's not a problem. Reish Lakish says, Kanas Eino Motzi. Once he withdraws and he doesn't right away put up that balcony, he's no longer allowed to put up that balcony. And the Gemara continues, Amarle Rabbi Yaakov Rabbi Yirmiyah. Rabbi Yaakov said to Rabbi Yirmiyah, Bar Tachlifa Sabralach, Bar Tachlifa, I'm going to explain to you what's really going on with this machlokus between Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish. Bar Tachlifa was a way to refer to Rabbi Yirmiyah, calling him by his father's name. And he explained as follows, Lahotzi kuliyama lo pligi demotzi. In terms of putting up an actual balcony, actually there is no argument. Everybody agrees, even in the future you can put up the balcony. Ki pligi, what are they really arguing about? Meaning, what are Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish really arguing about? Lahachzir ksalim lemakom. And the question is, can you put the wall back to where it was before? In other words, the person withdrew the wall from the property line at the beginning. Now he's deciding he doesn't want a balcony. He wants to put the wall up right up next to the Rosh Hashanah. Is he allowed to do that? And furthermore, the machlokas is actually reversed, meaning the one who allowed is not allowing, the one who didn't allow will allow, and it should be as follows. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Eino Machzer. Rabbi Yochanan says he's not allowed to return the wall to its place. Reish Lakish Amar Machzer. Reish Lakish says that he is allowed to return the wall to its place. And the Gemara continues and explains, Rabbi Yochanan Amar Eino Machzer. Rabbi Yochanan says he's not allowed to return the wall to its place. Mishum de Rabbi Yehuda. It's because of the ruling of Rabbi Yehuda. The Amar Rabbi Yehuda, because Rabbi Yehuda says, Meitzer shechzika bo rabim, if the public have used a certain boundary line for their own purposes, so then asur lakalkalo, it's forbidden at that point to ruin it, meaning once the public uses a certain space, so now they have the possession of that space, and you're no longer allowed to take it away from them, and that's exactly what's happening over here with the Rosh Hashanah. Reish Lakish Amar, but Reish Lakish says, Machzir, he is allowed to return the wall to its place, because Hani Mili Hecha Deleka Ravcha, the situation over there, meaning when Rabbi Yehuda said that you're not allowed to take it away from the public, that's if there is no other way to go. This is the only space for the public. But over here you have a Rosh Hashanah, there was plenty of space, so Ha'ika Ravcha, you have plenty of space, so there's no reason why the person can't return return the wall to its original boundary line. And the Rashbam explains, Meitzar shebein shtei sados, you have this boundary between the two fields, shechziku bo, which already the public are using, v'hachanami harei echziku b'hach knisa, here also he withdrew a little and now the public is using that space. And the Gemara then said that according to Reish Lakish makes a distinction that Ika Ravcha, in this situation, by the Rishus HaRavim, there is space, k'sheyachzer k'solim l'mekoman, if you put the walls back to their original place, akati Ika kol rochav Rishus HaRavim, you still have the entire width of what the Rishus HaRavim was. Ustam Rishus HaRavim meruvachu, and in general Rishus HaRavim is very wide, so it should not be a problem. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, Laka chotzer, if a person bought a chotzer, ubazizin guzuz taros, and within the chotzer there's a wall that has projections or balconies, harehi b'chezkasa, it's in its chazaka, and the buyer is fine to continue using it in that fashion. And the Gemara says, Amar Ravuna says, Nafla, let's say it falls down, let's say the wall falls down, Choser ubona osa, he's allowed to rebuild it exactly like it was, with the same projections, the same balconies that it already had. And the Gemara continues, Meisve, we have a question from the following Brisa, Ein mesaydin ve'in mekayrin ve'in mefaychen bizman hazeh. You're not allowed to plaster, you're not allowed to tile, you're not allowed to paint. Nowadays, it's a sign of mourning for the Beis HaMikdash. But loka chotzer misuyedes, let's say he bought a chotzer, already was plastered, mekuyeres, it already was tiled, mefuyachas, it already was painted, harezu b'chazkasa, so it's in its chazaka, he can keep it as is. But nafla, but if it falls down, eino choser ubono, so he's not allowed to rebuild it like it was. Even though it had a heter before, it was permissible when he bought it like that, but to rebuild it in the same fashion, that is a problem. Again, you're not supposed to do that as a sign of mourning because of the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. And so therefore the Gemara is arguing the same thing should be true over here. Just because there was permission to have these balconies, now that they fell down, it seems that you would not be able to rebuild it. And the Gemara answers Isura Shani. The Gemara answers the Bryce is talking about a prohibition, meaning the reason why you're not plastering, the reason why you're not tiling, etc., is because of a prohibition due to mourning for the Beis HaMikdash. So there, if it falls down, you're not allowed to do it, even though it was already up before. But that's not a reason why you can violate the Isser later on. However, in our case, when Rav Huna is talking about a situation where the person, it's a monetary situation, the person apparently has permission in terms of others that he's allowed to have these balconies there, so even if it falls down, he can rebuild it with the balconies because he already has that permission in the monetary sense. He's not considered encroaching on other people's property. And the Gemara continues, Tan Rabban, and the rabbis taught, Lo Yasud Adam es Beiso Besid, a person should not use plaster on his house. Again, the same idea, a sign of mourning for the Beis HaMikdash. V'im Irev Bo Cholo Tevin Mutter, but if he mixes in there sand or straw, then it's mutter, it's not as nice, it's not as white in that situation. And so therefore that's not considered a problem in terms of a lack of mourning for the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. And the Brisa continues, Rabbi Yehuda says, Irev Bo Chol, if he mixes in sand, Hareza Trachsid, that's actually a higher quality kind of plaster, it's like a cement, V'yasser, and that actually would be forbidden. But if he mixes in straw, so mutter, so it's going to be permitted. And the Rashbam explains, Ein Mesaydin, you can't plaster, bias, meaning you can't plaster the house, Mishum Evel, Beis HaMikdash, again, because of mourning for the Beis HaMikdash. Ve'in Mekayrin, the Rashbam has a couple explanations, Tzuros Shetzar Besid, it could be some kind of images that you make with the plaster. V'yesh Meforshim Dahainu Nami Siyut, some say that it's also plastering. Elishaki or Lavan Yoser is just a little whiter. Mefaychen means Tzuros Shalmine Tzivonim, it means you're painting certain kinds of images. All of those things, again, you're not allowed to do because of mourning for the Beis HaMikdash. And the Rashbam continues, Nafla Eino Choser, let's say it falls down, you can't go ahead now, even though you had a chazaka, but if it falls down, you can't rebuild it in the same fashion. Alma Kol Binyan Sheino Rashoy Lasos Betchili, you see that anything that you can't build that way in the first place, Im Hayalo V'Nafal Eino Choser Bon, if he had it that way and then it fell, he can't rebuild it in that old fashion. We should say the same thing when it comes to the projections into Rosh Hashanah. Since at the outset he's not allowed to do that, so if it falls, he's not allowed to do it. He can't rebuild it in that fashion. And then the Gemara answered, it's different when you're talking about a prohibition from a situation of damage. And the Rashbam continues, the Gemara then said that if you mix in cholo tevin, if you mix in sand or you mix in straw into the plaster, so then it's not going to be as white as it was, so it would be permissible. But then they had the other opinion, the Bryce had the other opinion of Rabbi Yehuda that when you use chol, so it's trachsid, it becomes like cement, binyan chazak v'tov, meaning it's stronger, even though it's a little bit blacker, also it's still going to be prohibited because it's an improved kind of plaster. And the Gemara continues, Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, Keshacharav habayis b'shniya, when the second Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, Rabu Perushin b'Yisrael, the Perushin and Klal Yisrael, they increased increased. The Prussian were people who separated from material things, from physical pleasures. Shelo lechol basar v'shelo lishtos yain. They stopped eating meat and they stopped drinking wine as a sign of mourning for the Beis HaMikdash. Nitzvah lohen Rabbi Yoshua. Rabbi Yoshua approached them to discuss this with them. Amar Leni said to them, Bonai, my sons, b'nei ma yatem ochlim basar ve'einatem shosem yain. Why are you not eating meat? Why are you not drinking wine? Amar lo, they said to him, Nochal basar, should we eat meat? Shemimenu makriven al gavi mizbeach. They used to bring meat on top of the mizbeach. V'achsha batel, and now the mizbeach is batel. They don't have a Beis HaMikdash anymore. Of course we shouldn't eat meat. Nishte yayin, should we drink wine? Sheminaskan al gavi hamizbeach. They would pour the wine libations on the mizbeach. V'achsha batel, and now that's nullified. Again, there's no Beis HaMikdash, there's no mizbeach, so that's why we don't eat meat. That's why we don't drink wine. Amar Lemi said to them, Imkain, if so, lechem lo nochal, we shouldn't have bread, we shouldn't eat bread, shekvar batlu menachos, because there's no longer the carbon mincha. After bepeiros, so they responded, you're right, we can have fruits instead. But he said, peiros lo nochal, fruits also we can't eat, shekvar batlu bikurim, because there's already no more bikurim. And so they said, after bepeiros acherim, bikurim doesn't apply to all fruits, we can use the other kind of fruits, which bikurim does not apply to. Mayim lo nishta, so he said, water we shouldn't drink, shekvar batul, nitzach hamayim, because you don't have the water libations anymore. And at that point, Shasku, at that point they were silent. Amar Lehen, he said to them, Bonai, my sons, Bo v'omer lachem, come and I'll say to you, Shelo l'sabel kol likor, not to mourn at all, efshar, that's impossible. Shekvar nigzer gezerah, because the decree was already passed, there has to be some mourning for the Beis HaMikdash. Well, l'sabel yoser midai, but to mourn to more than the normal extent, to mourn too much, efshar, that's also impossible. Shein gozrin gezerah latzibor lemkein rov tzibor yecholen lamud, because we don't have a decree on the community unless most of the community can take that decree. Will be able to uphold that decree. And how do we know that? As it's written in the pasuk says, "Ba'me'era atem nayarim." It says, "With the curse that you're cursed." V'yosi atem kovim, and you are robbing me. Hagoy kulo, the entire nation. And the idea is we're learning from the pasuk that only a gezer that the entire nation is keeping, only that we are held accountable for. And so then Rabbi Yoshua said, "Elakach amru chachamim." Rather, this is what the chachamim say: "Sad adam es beiso besid." A person will put plaster on his house, u'meshayir bo davar mud, but leave off a little bit. That will be a sign of mourning for the Beis HaMikdash. V'kam, and how much should the person leave off? Amar Rav Yosef says, "Amma alama." You should leave aside one amma by one amma. That amount, that square amma, that will be a sign of mourning for the Beis HaMikdash. Amar Rav Chisda says, "Keneged HaPesach." You should leave it by the door so everyone can see it. And again, that will be the sign of Avelus. And the Gemara continues along the same lines. Osa Adam called Tzarchei Seuda. A person can do everything he needs to prepare a meal for himself. Umeshayir davar mu'at, but he should leave off a small amount. And the Gemara says, Mahi, what's that small amount? Amar Rapapa says, Kasa daharsana. That's a kind of small fried fish that he should leave off. And the Gemara continues along the same lines. Osa isha kol tachshita. A woman can make all of her adornments. Umshayeres davar mu'at. She should leave off a small amount. Mahi, what's the small amount she should leave off? Amar Rav says, Basida, it's the area by the temple. The Rashbam says, first Kasa daharsana, Ka'orish al Michael Dagim, it was a plate of a kind of fish, Mituganan, that were fried, Beshamnan, Besolas, they had oil, it had flour, and Basida is the temple, refers to the temple, Sheregilos Losad Sham, Ulahasher Saran, the women used to take some of the hair, remove some of the hair from that area, and they would put some makeup on that area, so that she would leave off that small amount, again a sign of mourning for the Beis HaMikdash. Shenemar, as it says in the Pasuk, in Mashkachech Yerushalayim Tishkach, Yemini Tidbak Lashoni Lechiki, if I forget Yerushalayim, meaning it should not be forgotten. This is going on all of these various practices, not to forget Yerushalayim, that we should mourn for the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. And the Gemara continues, Mai al Rosh Simchasi. What does it mean in that pasuk of Meshkachech Yerushalayim? It says it should be al Rosh Simchasi, meaning to say that I remember Yerushalayim at the times of celebration. Amar Rav Yitzchak says, Efer Makle refers to Mikle, refers to the burnt ash, Sheberosh Chasonim, that the bridegrooms would put on their heads. That's the idea, al Rosh Simchasi, at the time of their celebration. It would be al Rosh, on their heads they would put this Efer Mikle. And the Gemara continues, Amar Le Rav Papa li Abaye, Rav Papa said to Abaye, Heicham monach lo, where would they actually put these ashes? B'makom tefillin. They would put it on the place of the tefillin. Shenemar, as it says in the pasuk, Lasum la'avlei tzion loses lahem pe'er tachas efer. The pe'er refers to the tefillin. The idea is that the efer, the ashes, go in the place of the tefillin. And the Gemara continues, V'chalam esabel al Yerushalayim zoche v'roa b'simchas. Anybody who mourns properly over Yerushalayim will merit, and he will see the celebration in Yerushalayim. Shenemar, as it says in the pasuk, Simchu es Yerushalayim v'gomer. It says, celebrate Yerushalayim. It means Kol HaMisavlim Aleh. All those who mourned over Yerushalayim will celebrate. And the Gemara continues, Tanya, we learned in a Bryce, Summer, Yishmael ben Elisha, Rabbi Yishmael ben Elisha says, Miyom Shechara Beis HaMikdash, from the day that the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, Dinu Shenigzor Al Atzmeinu, it really was, the law should have been that we made a gzeir on ourselves, Shelo Lechol Basar, Velo Lishtos Yayin, not to eat meat, not to drink wine, Ela Ein Gozrin Gzeir Al Tzibur, but we don't make a decree on the community, Ela Im Kein Rov Tzibur Yechol and Lamod, but unless the majority of the community are able to stand it, that they're able to keep that decree. Umiyom Shepashta Malchus Harisha Shegozeres Aleinu Gezeros Roos Vekashos, and from the day that the wicked kingdom, they started making these evil decrees and difficult decrees upon us, umevatelos mimenu Torah mitzvahs, and they cause us that we're not able to observe Torah and mitzvahs, vein maneches osanu likones l'shavua haben, and they don't allow us to enter the shavua haben. The Rashbam says l'shavua haben mila, they don't allow us to do bris mila, shehi l'sof zayin, that's the end of 7 days, meaning it's on the 8th day, that's why it's called l'shavua haben. V'amri lo l'yeshua haben, some say that the proper girsa should be l'yeshua haben. So when they have all of these difficult decrees against us, Dinu Shenigzor Al Atzmeinu, it is really, the law should have been that we made a gzeir on ourselves, Shalolisa Isha Laholed Bonim, not to get married and not to have children. V'nimtza Zaru Shal Avram Avinu Kala Me'elav, and it would come out that the seed of Avram Avinu, it would be finished on its own. Elahanach Lehem LiYisrael Mutav Shiu Shogegin V'al Yu Mizidin, but you should allow for Klal Yisrael, it's better that they do something wrong by mistake, rather than they be aware of this and they end up doing it on purpose. And the Rashbam explains, V'nimtza Zaru Shal Avram Avinu Kala Me'elav, it would come out that the seed of Avram Avinu would finish on its own. Binyan Tov, that's in a good fashion, V'lo al Yedei Ovdei Kochavim, and not through these idol worshippers. U'mitzvahs lo yivatlu od, and that way we won't end up being mevatel the mitzvahs, we won't end up not fulfilling the mitzvahs. So this actually would have been the better solution. Elahanach lehem liyisrael, but rather leave alone Klal Yisrael. Mutav shiu shogim, it's better that they make a mistake. B'meshalochin noshim she'inam svurim she'yesh eser b'davar, let them take wives, they don't realize that there's actually a prohibition that they shouldn't be doing it. V'yal yum mezidin, they shouldn't be doing something wrong on purpose. To mishum de lo yuchlu la'amod ba, because there'd be no way they'd be able to take such a gezerah, so yivat luas, so they would nullify it, they wouldn't listen to the gezerah. V'nimsu mezidin, would turn out that they're doing it on purpose. Hilkach lo gazrin, and therefore we don't make a gezerah. Hadran Allah cheskas habatim, we will return to you perek cheskas habatim. This is the end of the third perek of Meseches Bava Basra. If you're enjoying these videos and this channel, please like, share, and subscribe, and take a look at the description box below to see how you can support this channel. And in the next video, we will begin the fourth perek of Meseches Bava Basra.